Uh, well, and let me check the other channel real quick. Let's see. Okay, here's the gifts. It doesn't include today's talk, but it includes an earlier version of it. I'll put them over there by the sponsors. There you go. And the version at the exhibit has that version as well in the gift. Okay, we are almost at time. I'll wait for the cue from our stream team. Okay, hello everyone and welcome. Let me get the chat going here. It's so great. We want to thank you all for coming and joining us today, and please feel welcome to use the text chat and to tell us what you're thinking as we progress through our slides. Um, let's see. There we go. Today's talk is on Walden pathways through the metaverse, inspiring transcendental insights and creativity. We'd like you to watch a short video, and here the audience has already seen it. Later, it'll be part of the video, so we'll skip ahead, but we do have a 1 minute and 23-second video. So if you're watching on YouTube and later you'd like a link to it, please let me know. You can always contact me here or through the contact information at the end of the talk. The names you see on screen at the end include some of the Virtual Harmony Farm family and our community. I'd like to introduce our community members who inspire us and keep us strong. Algernon Loire, Mrs. Betty Stricker, and Lynn Skylark. They are the Heart Sisters in our family. Frankie Antonelli, who is Dr. Francisca Yanakura from the University of Central Florida. Then we have JJ Drinkwater, our science fiction librarian and the lover of literacy. And then, of course, our mastermind, Spinoza Quinnell, Dr. Andrew Stricker from the Air University. And of course, they didn't know I wrote all this, right? And then I'm Lobo, Dr. Cynthia Cologne from Parker University. Now, our continued work is in memory and honor of our dear sister of the heart, delightful Duwangle, Dr. Barbara Truman. We are Virtual Harmony. Today, we're going to discuss the benefits of the use of OpenSimulator and Meta Oculus apps for education and self-discovery. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Stricker, to Spinoza, aka Spin, to talk about our design philosophy, which bridges cross-cultural transcendentalism with Ikigai. Andy, over to you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Lear, for just a wonderful introduction of our community to the people attending our presentation today. And as always, we just cherish the opportunity to come and share about the work that we've been involved with. You see before you a little outline that we'll use to go through to talk about our work with the bridging between open sim and Meta, the Meta platform. And we have,
Hey, Andy, could you get a little closer to the mic? We can just barely hear you.
yes. So can you hear me better now?
You sound fantastic. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So we want to be able to share about our journey with this development process, and we have an outline before you that will discuss a little bit of our purpose with the effort and our underlying philosophy that we're addressing in the app, and we'll cover our principles and design, and we'll talk about the user experience going through the app, and then we'll share briefly the learning activities that we address in our application, and we'll also share some screen snapshots from where we're at with the development work. And we'll talk about some really interesting bridging possibilities going into the future between these kinds of platforms with Meta. And then share some of the design insights so far that we've learned. And at the end, take questions that you may have. So Lear, can you put the next slide up for us?
I
So the
sure
purpose,
can.
thank you. The purpose of the harmony ikigai, and there's different ways to pronounce ikigai. The American way is ikigai, and then the Japanese is ikigai. So either way of saying it works pretty good. But we wanted to create an opportunity to show what could be possible through combining our experience with Second Life and OpenSim with Meta for supporting what we've come to call immersive informal learning communities. And much like what virtual harmony represents for us, we're a collective that chooses to get together and we learn from each other and we learn from and share with our students across our different universities. And we also wanted to highlight what we're trying to do with cross-cultural learning. And so the two areas that we're addressing in the app is transcendentalism and ikigai. So, Lyra, can you bring the next slide up? Thank you. So, some of you may have heard of Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He sort of launched the what is a very unique American perspective in philosophical thought, and it's called transcendentalism. And one of his most famous colleagues, Henry David Thoreau, addressed his views of transcendentalism in Walden Pond. And um, so we took that as our theme for the app. And so we've created a lot of pathways for people to learn as they're going through these very scenic environments to learn about what is transcendentalism and what is ikigai, because we think and we believe that the two concepts, although they come from very different cultures, are actually very much related in what they're trying to place importance upon. So transcendentalism places importance upon getting connected with nature, and that helps our relationships with others, and it helps us to understand our bigger place in the universe. And in similar ways, Japanese culture, uh, uh, this concept of ikigai goes back centuries, and it's basically a way of thinking about your life and the importance you place on everything that you do, no matter how small it may be. But you want to be engaged with an awareness of the activities that you're involved in, uh, so that you feel that connection, that we all are interconnected with nature and with others. So you can see there's a great deal of commonality. And we have the quote up here from Henry David Thoreau, where he says, "It's not what you look at that matters; it's what you see." And so that's one of the things we believe these immersive virtual reality environments offer us is, we can offer this kind of transcendence experience through the work that we do with the designs to bring, much more vividness to people's imagination. Next slide, please.
Well, before we move on, Andy, I don't know if you see the text chat, but I had added a little piece on one of my favorite books, which is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. When I was a young woman, I read it, well, from age 10 on. And of course, it was like a role model for me for what the ideal family and family values and social good and service to others and the very fabric of the things we value. And so, her father was part of the Romantic period and part of this same movement, and of course was well known for starting schools for everyone and for being an advocate for women's rights. And all of these things kind of come together in a way to inspire us as we create this app and then think about why these things matter. So I'm catching up with you on the text chat here. Ikigai has several definitions, and let's see. I'll go to the next slide and we'll take a look at those. Over to you,
Okay.
Andy.
Well, thank you so much. That's a wonderful, um, comparison to, you know, similar themes that many of us have come to cherish that we're sort of rediscovering, as it were, in the times that we live in and how important they are. And this visual that you see before you compares sort of the high level five principles of transcendentalism with ikigai ikigai principles. And you can see, if you go across, for example, you know, transcendental thought that Emerson wrote about was discovering your purpose in life. And this often can be done through your engagement with nature and connections with others. And the ikigai principle is, you you need to discover what really inspires you. They talk about sparking the soul, and when you do this, when you discover what really inspires you, this helps you to determine how to live a life with purpose. And it doesn't have to be very grand. You can start off doing really simple things in your life to get that sense of, you know, your purpose. And then with Emerson's thought on the second principle, he says, it's really important just to trust yourself to grow, much, similar to what takes place in nature. There's just an emergent characteristic of who we become and our identity as we experience things. And similar in the Japanese culture with ikigai, it's, they talk about the importance of accepting this natural way of your evolvement in life and yourself. And the third principle that Emerson speaks of is, there is a wonderful thing that takes place when we connect with others, much like what you find in these virtual environments in Second Life or Open Sim. When you get to know other people, you really get a bigger sense of, the power of diverse perspectives and different life experiences, and it really can enrich your life. And Emerson also talks about that when you connect with others in much more expansive ways, you get a sense of the infinite in nature. That there's a larger um, significance to the experiences that we have in life. And in similar ways, the ikigai cultural principle related to this is when we connect with others and in nature, um, there's a sense of harmony. And when you learn how to work with others and communicate effectively with others, that creates a harmonious experience in your life. And then the fourth principle that Emerson talked about was, he said, it's very important that we shape our character with some sense of purpose, in the sense that we understand the values that matter to us. And he says, when we shape our character with purpose, this actually shapes our destiny. It really helps us on our pathways in life. And in similar ways, the Ikigai principle, when you find joy in the little things, it's the little things of life that you pay attention to, particularly in the early years of your life. They build upon themselves into bigger, um, effects. And so do things well at whatever level of effort that you're involved in, and because you focus on doing things well at that level, things work out much better for you as you evolve and build upon your skills. And then finally, the fifth principle that Emerson addressed in transcendentalism is the importance of living in the present. And he was very uh, a strong believer that the sense of the grand perspective of eternity in our meaningfulness and our existence really can find expression in the moments in that we live our lives. And so so in Thoreau's work, for example, Thoreau had the same feelings as he got connected with nature, that he was actually glimpsing into the eternal truths of what it was like to connect in a deeper way to the purpose of your life. And similar to the ikigai principle, they put tremendous emphasis upon being present in the moments and in the place in which you find yourself. And many of you are educators about these virtual environments, and we talk about the importance of space and place, and how we want people to really take the informal nature of space and make it personable, and turn these spaces into really meaningful places and experiences. Lear, do you have some thoughts here? Okay,
Yes,
we can
I
go
do. I just had to find the mute button.
to.
While you're typing it, I always have to mute so that we don't hear clitter clatter, right? But no, often I'm asked, why do you do this sort of thing? Um, everywhere I go, they're like, well, that looks like a lot of work. Why would anyone do that? And I'm always saying, students learn so much better when we're immersed, when they're creating content, when they're touching things, when they're experiencing, when we're having these deep probing conversations in situ. And and then we learn so much from the design of these spaces and from the things we craft. Just doing the exhibit here taught me so many things this week. And I've just moved in. My office is here now until April 10th, right? And and as a result, I just feel such a communion with it all and why it matters. And so that's what I love about our theme is that we're trying to explain what seems to be inexplicable to those who think, wow, that's a lot of work. No real human would do that. And yet we get together and what's phenomenal about what we're about to show you and what was featured briefly in the video is that at Christmas, uh, three of us got Oculus Quest 2s that we're now calling Meta based on the new company name and new branding. And of course, we were like, well, okay, we've been working in VR for a really long time. For me, it's been since 95. Andy, I'm not sure when you started, but I know we started collaborating in 2008. So, so we've been working on these kinds of technologies for a really long time, and we were like children in a candy store with the new gear, right? And while it's not perfect, it's pretty good. And it excited us by the possibilities. And we said, what would it take to get Open Simulator and Sakurajima, one of our grids, we have 18 grids in Open Simulator, what would it take to take some of that content that Frankie Antonelli and Spinoza here created in this amazing virtual world, what would it take to get some of that content into a VR app and try to share that experience with more people in a very personable and immersive way? We'll go to the next slide, Andy, and you can take us
and
on
I
this journey.
and I
Oh,
would
yeah, go
like
ahead.
to I would like to just highlight. I'm so glad you mentioned Frankie's cultural heritage. Would you like to speak to that, Frankie? Frankie, about Frankie's really helped guide us with the Japanese perspective on these principles.
Sure. Well, yeah, although I was not born in there, my ancestry is Japanese. And so in this journey, actually, Andy has helped me connect with it, if you will. And, you know, it sort of allowed me to leave these principles that we have been talking about, Emerson's transcendentalism and the Ikigai. And in this journey, I have come to the realization that many of the things my parents, my grandparents, my friends from Japan, where I had aha moments, if you will, of like, oh, that is why they do that, or that's why they see and say these things to me, or have told me over the years, um, um, the things that they say. And so, yeah, thank you, your family here to connect with my folks.
Well,
My beginning.
thank you so
Yeah.
much, Frankie. So in our design, that we've got some of the highlights here on this visual. We wanted to take several years of our journey with Second Life and OpenSim and where we've learned about, what to do in creating shared immersive spaces. Um, and we want to, tap into this larger, basically predominantly web-based user community that comes from Facebook. And later on in our talk, we're going to talk about some issues that we have seen with some of the adjustments, as Lear talked about, with Facebook's change to the branding of the Meta platform. And then we also wanted to take, um, our work that we've done with mesh models and data models that support informal learning communities, and bring them over into the VR-based Meta work that we're doing right now. And we'll talk about that here. But the good news is we think there's a lot of goodness between what Second Life and OpenSim can offer these other types of platforms like Meta, because of the extensive insights that many of you sitting here today with us have pioneered in some cases with how best to create these kinds of compelling, engaging environments in immersive platforms. So our learning focus overall is, the informal learning communities. And since many of us actually are engaged in informal communities, we think you can actually leverage a lot of insights from the informal aspects of design, even with our students in our graduate school programs. We have two goals, and one was we wanted to support uh, both an individual opportunity to go through the app and also for group share usage of the app. And so um, the app that we have underway right now supports both. So you can go in and just sort of explore it and go through the various scenes, and then, or you can invite others and they can actually participate in the activities with you. So, and we bring a lot of that from our experience with Second Life and OpenSim. And then we wanted to, with goal number two, we want to, you know, um, you know, take the opportunity to keep doing what we do with a lot of our work over the years, and that is in self-development. We're very focused on creating environments where people can learn and grow in, and we also wanted to, support cross-cultural community building, so people from different cultures can learn from each other and have opportunities to interact. Anything here, Lear?
We'll
Okay.
go ahead, Andy, to the next slide.
Okay, thank you. Um, so here's a screen snapshot when you first come in through the Oculus into our app in Meta. You get this you know interface that pops up, and so you have a chance to um, enter your profile information, your settings, and then learn about each of the scenes in the app. And this is fairly common in Meta apps. For some of you that have been out there in Meta with your Oculus or Rift devices, you see this as a way for people to get an orientation, as it were, uh, to the activities of an app. So in our app, we have three scenes. One is a tea house, and that's sort of like our commons area, and it's fairly typical in Meta apps where you have an area for people to be able to meet and get together before they go into the actual activities of the app. And so instead of calling it commons, we called it in line with our theme for the app, the tea house area. And then we've got the pathways, is the second scene that you go into, and this is where we take the environment of Sakurajima, that is an actual area in Japan on a peninsula where the Sakurajima volcano, and it's actually an active volcano in Japan, um, but in the late 1800s there was an eruption, and it used to be an independent island. Now it's actually a peninsula. But so when you go out to the pathways, you see this volcano, and you can take um, journeys around it. And so this is where the Walden pathways comes into place, because there's many different pathways, and you can kind of self-discover and go off in different areas to explore. And then once you get through the activities and learn about transcendentalism and ikigai through the activities and the pathways, you go into the third scene, which is a capstone experience. To get to the capstone, you have to accomplish activities to get access to a key that unlocks a chest that brings you into this third scene. So we're trying to bring in some gaming elements, but very low key, because we want to appeal to all ages. We are certified, our app is certified for ages 12 and above, and so by Meta and the international guidance agency that gives the certifications for age groups. Next scene, please. Next slide. Thank you. So inside the pathways scene, we have the principles that you see on the left-hand side, and then we've got these activities. And so, you know, we have a rock climbing activity where people can, you know, as they're taking these small steps up this mountain face, they get a chance to be reinforced with the importance of this principle. So we want to tie in the physical activity with the mental mindset, like Carol Dweck would often speak of. You know that, you know, if you can relate what you're doing, then you can associate a lot of the cognitive pieces for understanding. So, you know, that's why you see all the things that we have in the activity. You know, we have concept information that's shared at the beginning, but then when you go out into the pathways, you're actually doing things. So when we get to the principle we're addressing, accepting oneself, we have a rope course. And so what's nice about this particular capability in Meta is there's a lot of kinesthetic support, and Algernon is going to share a little bit about that at the end. And then we have a wildlife exploration. So all through the pathway, there's a variety of wildlife that you identify and connect on the cognitive level with the actual experience of discovery of these various wildlife along the pathway. And then sort of the fun thing with the joy part, we have a gemstone collection activity where you accumulate these gemstones and bring them back to an onsen area in the app for collection. And we then, on the fifth principle, we support an activity where you tag your favorite places so that others can see things along the pathway that, you know, you found particularly um, important as you've experienced it. Anything here, Lear or Frankie, that you'd like to add?
Well, did Algernon wanted to talk about those kinesthetics, or do you want to do it when we see the
She's gonna
images?
do that at the end.
Okie dokie, sounds good.
Yep.
Then Frankie, did you have anything?
No, go ahead. I just wanted to say how much fun it has been. It's a different kind of interaction, but so familiar at the same time. And yeah, I love how Andy has tied the the principles that kind of launched us to get into this journey with the capabilities of Meta. Thank you.
Thank you. So here we've got two screen snapshots of each of the scenes coming up. So this is the tea house, and so when you first come in, you and some of you know that Meta is under an involvement with avatar forms, and so the prevalent form is a from the waist up, and so you can use your same avatar that you have in Facebook in Meta, and so this app supports that. So there's a software development kit for developers from Meta where you can tap into that avatar structure And so people don't have to worry about creating an avatar to come into this. They can use their existing avatars. And when you come in to the tea house, you can see others that are there, and they can then decide if they want to go into the pathway portion of the app together and do it as a shared activity or do it independently. And we have little orientation activities in the tea house to get you used to using your hands. So as I mentioned before, the hands of the meta avatars are, very key uh, because you can actually, use your index finger and your thumb to grab objects. So we have a little crystals activity where you can go and practice grabbing the crystals and stacking them. We have a game board you can play different games on. You can grab the items at the table and get the kettle and the teapot and the cups and hold them and so forth. So you get a chance to really, and you can even hand these things off to other people there in the scene with in a very fluid way. So they can reach out with their hand and you can put it into their palm and they can grab it and so forth. And then we support voice so you can talk to others as you're in these scenes. Next slide, please, Sam.
Sure, Andy. We had a question also from the audience. Someone asked if how they could participate in this if they didn't have the Oculus Quest 2. They have a Facebook account, but no Quest 2. And, there's an observation we make later on, the fact that the backbone of this system is Android based and mobile based. So we don't know how this is going to evolve over time. But for right now, we know that we're working within the constraints of an Android application that is set in VR with mesh content. And so bringing all those elements together and trying to right size the app and to reflect on performance, reflect on the shared abilities and all the different elements. And for us, the part of the inquisitiveness here was what would it take to integrate the two worlds and somehow keep them both going at the same time or transition between them back and forth or because we don't want to leave behind the things we value. That's why we started by talking about the things that matter, right? And so what you see on screen right now is from the app, right? The VR side of it. But and of course there are certain qualities that you can do there that you cannot do here. And we're kind of wondering if these technologies will stimulate growth here, in virtual worlds, whether it's Second Life or OpenSim or wherever, and then also activity there. For example, I mentioned the ability to touch things. While Andy is focused now on the crystals and we're not using the checkerboard as actively, the last time I was in there, I was playing checkers, So I would pick up a piece and move it to the next, location, and as you would in life. And so you can manipulate all of these objects by just picking them up with your hands and moving them over to this other area. And we're going to show you in a later slide. It's probably in a couple of slides, so I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We're going to show you some of the evolution of thinking about what does it take to directly interact with content, and then how does the user feel about that experience, as opposed to what we do here, which is to left click and to launch a script, right? Oh, but of course, for those of you who don't intend to get a head-mounted display device and to actually use VR, that's fine. What we're really trying to do is think about where are these technologies going and how are we helping to shape some of those requirements and future technologies through our use and development of it and seeing the progression of change that's just happened in the last 3 months since the end of year holidays when we received our appliances, right? So this is all this work you're seeing is what we have done. And of course I say we, but Spin's doing the heavy lifting. What we do is we say, well, that's nice, but we really needed to do this, And then of course he works and works and makes that happen. And that's the magical part of this community is that he's so patient with our needs and our desire to sit as we travel through this app. I'll move to the next slide, Andy.
Thank you. So this um, visual here shows snapshots from the pathways scene. So it's a wooded environment with streams and ponds. So there's when you start out, you're at a very charming Japanese garden area with koi in a pond and very scenic. And then as you move into the forest area, you take all these different pathways. So here's on the left-hand side is the rock climbing activity. And so we have different levels of supporting different skill sets. So, there's one way up the mountain that's, very small steps. And so you reach out with your hand and you pull your avatar up with your arms and hands, and you pretty much, climb up the mountain holding on to these uh, extensions that we have out there. And then if you want to go up a more difficult pathway up the mountain, then you can branch off to the left or right. And this requires a little more skill. So people can come back through the app and take, more challenging versions of some of these activities. And then on the right hand side, you can see looking down the pathway, for example, a waterfall area. And so we have AI um, um, animals that actually are involved in along the pathway. So we've got different types of animations that are driven by AI that will sort of be able to be aware of where you're at and follow you, and then they come and go and so forth. So it creates a very dynamic kind of an experience. It's hopefully much more natural. The next one, please. So here's our third scene, what we call the capstone scene, and as you can see, that's up on a mountaintop, uh, we call the summit, and you see the Sacrogema volcano in the background, and this is where we want to offer the reflections and the sort of the analysis, as it were, of the things that you learned about in the pathway scene, and sort of put a really nice touch to bringing back the relationship of the activities to the principles that the app is addressing. And so um, we're really doing everything we can to create a very compelling experience for that last scene, so that it sticks with you. And so we've got overlooks. You can actually go out and get really amazing views of the volcano. There's actual pathways that go down into a valley that you can explore now. So uh, so this is where we're at, but now we're going to get and talk about some bridging things that we've been experimenting with in our next scene slide that
Hey, Andy,
we'll bring.
bef- right, before we move there, I had a little thought. We get together on Sundays, either every other week or in past years every week, and work on these things. And actually Frankie is adding something here on the onsen house as well. Um, you know, these images and the beauty within these scenes strikes a certain chord within me, and it really makes you feel not just the atmosphere, not the gee that's nice, but a sense of awe and wonder. Especially for me, I've been home since March 2020, right? So it's not like I'm getting out and climbing mountains. And yet to be able to do so in these spaces and have so many different ways of sharing, and of course, the effects that you've put in here from a technical aspect is a little bit different than what we do here in the virtual world. And of course, we have a deep appreciation for that. OpenSim, you said, didn't do badly with that, but did you want to talk about that atmospheric setting real quick?
Yeah, one of the things that we try to do in each of the platforms that we work in is create you know within the constraints of the hardware people have to use, but we want to certainly support a natural environment with shade, casting shadows, reflection, light reflections. um, we with systems that, in the environment for fog and mist and spray. So like, for example, when you're walking on the pathway in the previous scene along the waterfall, the water splashes on the bridge, and you can see that, and so we worked very hard to create those atmospherics. And with each like Lear was talking about earlier with the Android device, there are trade-offs, and so bit by bit we learn how to compensate for the trade-offs across our work. But we're just so very happy that all the mesh models, by the way, all the mesh models that you're seeing in each of these scenes, we've brought and we use in our open sim. And so that's a wonderful benefit.
Thank you, Andy. We'll move on to the next slide. And for everyone wondering, we are in our last 3 slides.
Yep. So here is a snapshot in Meta where we're linking into OpenSim from a virtual computer, and we're controlling what's taking place in the OpenSim grid with our Oculus on in our handheld devices. So we can switch from third to first person view in our Oculus um, environment, and have very fluid controls of the avatar and movement. And so um, this suggests to us that there is great prospects ahead in the future for how we can bridge these environments. And I'm sure some of you in your imaginations can envision what that could do for options for people, and how they can actually leverage the work that people have done in Second Life with our open sim into these kinds of headset VR environments. And so we have found also that all of our we program in C# for in our open sim data structures, and we brought just wonderful portability from our data structures into the Meta platform. It's all C#, and so that's helped us considerably. So a lot of the things that we do for storing user activity data and are creating very dynamic models that interact with the user, we've been able to port very, very well. Okay. And we're going to, in the next slide here, we're going to talk about our insights that we've picked up along the way. And these are some of the things that you've heard us hint at at the start of this presentation. But the first insight that we have is we think that experiences that many of you have acquired in Second Life and OpenSim, with these very compelling, shareable, immersive spaces, the meta community can benefit from, because what we have noticed right now at the early days of Meta is, a lot of it is singular individual types of orientations in the apps. And so, I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for, any one of you that is interested in doing this kind of bridging work, that you can bring a lot of value and insights into the Meta community regarding what is very distinctive, unique about what Second Life has learned about these kinds of opportunities with immersive spaces and open sim. And then I've talked about the really unique hand device kinesthetics and why that matters. I'm going to turn this over to Algernon. Algernon is one of our most engaged testers and designers. So Algernon, would you like to share some of your thoughts about the handheld device in Meta?
Yes, thank you, Andy. After being involved in design learning environments for years and years, the one key principle that I picked up and now using the handheld devices is the extension of my learning through natural manipulation of my hands. I have been able to less focus on the technology and much more able to do what comes naturally in, and provided myself a much more immersive capability to focus on the learning. In our scenes, the way we've laid them out, we've taken the principle of learning how to manipulate in a fun fashion where you learn by doing. So you play with the crystals and the different checkers and so forth. When you're not even, you're so focused on playing the game that you lose yourself in the fact that you're learning. And that's a key principle, I believe, in allowing a learner to not focus on the have to break concentration and come back to what they're learning, the learning principles that they're focusing on. The other aspect in taking that is that we go through that process through each scene and continue to scaffold the learning aspects. So they get more and more engaged. They continue to build on their manipulations capabilities and finding some of the fun and joy of climbing new challenges. And even I see this going further into the future. As we know, technology over the last 30, 40 years has come more and more and more down to the, everybody has I'll take that back. Most have some sort of technology that they're holding in their hands, and especially our younger generations that are coming up. You almost see them, I'm surprised they're not in their cribs, but they are learning these manipulations, how to use these technologies. And as they grow, it's a natural progression to continue to want to get in there. Yet what we have failed to do, which this app is addressing, that I get to every day experience here on Harmony Farm, is for finding fulfillment in the joy and having purpose in the joy of life. And that a lot is what I see every day. The pathways, the types of environments that we've created here are the natural wonders that are part of the everyday life that we are so busy that a lot of times we forget to notice. And that's why Blair mentioned in the very beginning the Harmony Farm setting. And being able to be out with animals, enjoy things and so forth. So we've tried to bring a lot of that into this app so that people can, as they're getting more into the app and finally reaching the capstone, they realize that even for their own life experiences, that there is a way to reach and find joy and purpose again in life that makes them happy, to find the joy. And I just, that was my key expression. And I think we are going to see those technology change over time, as we've seen in the medical field with through robotics and those kinds of fine tuning. And hopefully the students that you're teaching will engage in this activity and have a new life focus and a technology that they can take to the next level.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Lear, and Algernon. The Algernon has inspired us with her insights, with her care of animals and nature, and we just cherish all the things that she's helped us to address in the recreation in this app. On our last slide here, before we ask our questions, for those of you that want to pose questions, we identified some constraints, and one of the constraints, of course, is the Oculus device is an Android based, And so that does have some bearing on the size factors of your models in terms of fidelity and so forth. But so far, we've managed to keep a pretty good high fidelity of the models uh, pushed to the Android device from Meta, and we're hoping that we can continue to do that going into the future. And then motion sickness has been an issue. All of us have been somewhat experienced with uh, virtual simulations, and we build a lot of you know you know high motion types of vehicles in our work, and so we've learned about ways to help minimize motion sickness. And what we've done in this Meta app that we're working on is we give people the option to stay seated in a chair. So everything you can do in the app can be done while you're sitting in your chair or your couch in your living room. Now, if you want to stand up and be much more engaged, like there's parts of mountain climbing or the rope course where you can actually get very involved in a safe space as you're using your legs and hands and arms. But if you want, we've purposely created ways to do these activities while you're seated on a chair or couch. And then Lear talked about this last design insight that we've had, and that we think it's very, very important, and that is this entry into this environment is not available to everyone, because you have to have an Oculus device and be able to have the means to purchase it. And so over the years, we've been very careful about trying to keep as many entry options open for our students and our friends and family and colleagues. But with this Oculus device, the price is going down, but still it can be quite quite difficult for people to gain entry into Meta. Okay, so Lear, is it take any questions? We don't say questions here, but we say insights, because some of you have a lot of different thoughts, I'm sure, that can help us and
Right. Well,
work.
we're
So
we're at the end of time, and we want to thank everyone. We certainly want you to share your insights. You do not feel constrained by the speakeasy. Please feel welcome to talk in the chat. We want to set up for the next speakers, but I want to thank the organizers at VWBPE, the many volunteers who make this possible, who invited us to come speak and share. I want to thank you for joining us, and your questions are wonderful. We know these kinds of apps are not going to appeal to everyone, and we certainly see the need for hardware to be a barrier, right, for some users. But we kind of wonder if the world is going to be heading in this direction, or if it's going to stimulate opportunities for getting away from the hardware. Thank you. And I want to thank my wonderful team, Algernon, Frankie, JJ, Barbara, and Spinoza, for joining me today. Thank you. Bye-bye.
bye bye.